So I'm here at the messiest tying desk in all of San Diego. Want to show you how to tie a really quick, effective pattern for Baja that when you're leaving in a day or two like I am, you can whip out just to fill some holes in your box. I'm using a Gamakatsu SC17 Tarpon hook in a 3/0. I like it because it's short shank, very sharp, heavy duty. You could just as easily tie it on an SL12S, which is a really wonderful hook, probably a 2/0 or a 3/0 in that. I'm using Veevus heavy duty mono. If you're comfortable tying with mono, I think it's great for tying with synthetic materials. If you're not comfortable tying with mono or you haven't done it before, you'd be perfectly fine sticking with a more standard thread. So what I'm going to do is kind of wrap down to about here, throw some wraps on. I don't tend to fuss around with a lot of glue. You know, some people will suggest throwing some glue over the wraps there, but that's, you don't have to do that. Your fly's not going to fall apart the instant it hits the water. So I'm going to take a length of crystal flash cactus chenille in a pearl, and I'm going to just tie that in. And this is largely just to provide some structure for the fly. High tying with slinky fiber doesn't require this, but I think this gives you a slightly better result, and it makes the final, or makes the process a little bit easier. So I'm just going to wrap that around, pulling it back as I go to make sure that's sort of very dense and it's dense and all the fibers are sort of aligned. Bring it up to about, if you can see that there, within, there's maybe a 1/4 inch left on the shank, and just tie that off. Pull everything back, make sure it's out of the way here. Throw some wraps on. And this is where it gets really simple. Take a length of slinky fiber. I actually kind of love what they call off-white. It's got much less kink in it than the standard white slinky fiber. The fibers, to me, feel a little bit thicker and stiffer. It's almost more like a yak. If you've tied with real yak hair. I think the sheen and the color is also really nice. You can certainly use white. You can use bucktail white. Any of those will work, but this is sort of just a preference I've developed over the years. I'm going to take, this has a little bit curve at the end, so I'm just going to chop that off. Take a bunch of the fibers here. It's probably, people, try to describe the thickness. This is about a matchstick's worth. And what I'm going to do is restack the fibers by pulling on the ends. There are sort of different ways to do this, but the idea is that you're taking these straight synthetic fibers that have no natural taper to them, and you're drawing them out so that it actually looks a little bit more natural, and you get kind of a natural taper where the lengths of fiber, or the ends of the fiber, are all at different places. And I'm going to tie this fly without flash. I'll talk about a variation I do at the end where I use a lot of flash that's also very effective. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that hunk once I've stacked it. You can see it's sort of got a nice taper there. I'm going to fold it in half over the thread, and I'm just going to sort of lock that thread down right at the eye of the hook. and then throw some wraps, pretty tight wraps, over that, securing it to the side of the fly there. And then I'm going to repeat that on the other side of the fly. Get about the same amount of fiber. Restack it. Get that taper. You know, spend a lot of time with synthetics, you know, stacking. If this is where you'd also blend in flash, if you were gonna sort of make this as a flashier version. So I'm gonna replicate exactly the same thing there, fold it over, lock it in sort of toward the eye of the fly, and then fold it over and wrap that down. And what you've done there is you've created sort of, you've got, you know, check that nice profile. This is a standard, looks to me to be about 6-inch hank of fiber. Might be 8, I don't know what it is, but the length of just really no trimming works out quite nicely for sardines. So you've got that. You're basically halfway done, so take a sip of beer. Get ready to finish it off. You're going to get another hank of your fiber, about the same size. And for this, because this is going to go on the bottom and actually help taper the fly out, you want it to be a little bit shorter. So, you know, trim about an inch, inch and a half probably off that. And then, again, restack. And then on the underside of the fly, you're just going to take that, again, folding it over the thread. Folding over the thread does two things. It provides a really nice anchor so that those fibers, you can sort of put that near the head of the fly. You don't have to wrap over it with enough pressure to get it to tie down. It also helps keep the fibers from pulling out, so you can, basically all you're doing is locking it in with these wraps over the material there. So it doesn't look like much there, but as you tie that in, lock that down, you start to have the shape of a fly, shape of a minnow. You can, you know, at this point, if you want to, you can comb it out a little bit. This looks like it might need a few more wraps just to pull that up in the body of the fly there. But as this swims through the water, you can, you know, you can trim that out if it looks like it needs trimming. This is being a little bit stubborn there, but you get the idea. And when we throw an eye on it, it'll help hold it together too. I'm probably gonna need to trim that a little bit, but basically you've created the body of your fly. You're gonna come in on the top. This is synthetic yak in what I think they call like a rusty amber or something like that. The synthetic yak and the off-white slinky fiber pair pretty well together. So, say it pairs well together, but it's kind of slightly more obnoxious to work with. It's probably been sitting in the bottom of a tying box for some time. So, same deal, stack that. Get the taper you want. Never hurts to sort of check it against the the fly to see where it's going to be. Fold it over. Start it at the eye of the hook. And then wrap over. And the nice thing with mono thread is you really don't have to do anything to finish the head here. You can just toss in a whip finish. Then come in with your head cement, UV glue, however you like to finish your wraps. And that mono thread's kind of just going to disappear there. Look pretty clean, you know, use the glue to help lock those fibers in. So I can see that this probably is going to benefit from a little bit of trimming on the underside there. You know, I may have done the that belly tie a little bit too short, but you get a pretty nice profile out of that when you've got it where you want it. You're going to want to come in with your E6000 glue, which I'm looking around for mine here on this desk, I'm not seeing it. So let me see here. All right, got my E6000 glue. Noxious stuff. Normally I actually like to do this outside when I'm doing a whole bunch of flies, just because it the fumes from this stuff are really unpleasant. But a dollop of that, um, 5/16 size or 7mm tends to be about right. Sort of pop that on there. The nice thing about using that cactus chenille is that it does also give you a little bit of a base for to stick the eye onto. So just stick that on. And you can, you know, you can do some other things here to help with the profile, help it. You can use some glue, sort of give it some shape. You can work a little more of the E6000 in underneath the head there, but pretty easy pattern. Definitely catches fish. Definitely takes very little time to tie. I have, if I can find it, a variation of this that I like to do with a slinky fiber and some other materials. So this is basically the same approach, but has a ton of flash blended into the slinky fiber, and uses what they call the natural green colorway of slinky fiber, and a little bit of sort of peacock herl dark material, angel hair on the top, and that can be really effective for especially baby rooster fish. If we're being honest, when they're blitzing, it can just be really terrific in that situation. fishing in Muertos Bay, for example. So there you have it. Really easy. Fill your box up, throw it at fish, catch fish, have a good time.